I knew she was lying. And now, she'll pay.
The phone rang at 4:17 a.m., cutting through my dreams like a rusty blade. Nobody calls with good news at that hour. I fumbled for the receiver, my hand shaking from more than just sleep. Mr. Mallory? This is Cleveland General Hospital. Your wife is giving birth. I sat up so fast my vision blurred. I'm sorry, what? Melanie Mallory, she's in labor. You need to come immediately. The line went dead. I stared at the phone like it had just told me the moon was made of cheese. There was just one tiny problem with this midnight medical miracle. My wife Melanie had been dead for 2 years. I threw on yesterday's clothes and drove through the empty streets of Cleveland, my mind racing faster than my beat-up Ford. The city looked different at this hour. Darker, more honest somehow. Streetlights cast yellow pools on wet asphalt, and the steel mills in the distance belched their familiar orange glow into the pre-dawn sky. Melanie. Dead Melanie. Supposedly dead Melanie. 2 years ago, she'd been driving home from her job at Cleveland General's HR department when her car went off the Lorraine Bridge. They never found her body, just pieces of the Honda floating downstream. I'd grieved, buried an empty coffin, and tried to rebuild my life as a single father to our 17-year-old son, Tommy. Now, someone claiming to be her was having a baby? My head felt like it was full of cotton and broken glass. At the hospital, I followed signs to the maternity ward, my work boots squeaking against polished linoleum. The fluorescent lights made everything look sickly green. A nurse with kind eyes and tired shoulders approached me. Mr. Mallory, I'm Janet. Your wife is in room 314. There's been a mistake, I said. My wife died 2 years ago. Janet's expression shifted from professional sympathy to confusion. Sir, the woman in that room has your name listed as emergency contact. She specifically asked for Vincent Mallory. Vincent. Only 3 people in the world called me Vincent instead of Vince. My mother, my dead father, and Melanie. Room 314 was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. I pushed open the door and nearly fell over. The woman in the hospital bed looked exactly like Melanie. Same auburn hair, same green eyes, same small scar above her left eyebrow from when she fell off her bike at age 12. But it wasn't Melanie. I knew that the moment she looked at me. Hello, Vince, she said quietly. I'm Lucy, Mel's twin sister. The world tilted sideways. In 17 years of marriage, Melanie had never mentioned having a twin. She barely talked about her family at all, claiming they were complicated and better left in the past. Twin sister, I repeated, sinking into the visitor's chair. Right, and I suppose you're going to tell me this makes perfect sense. Lucy shifted uncomfortably, wincing as she adjusted her position. A tiny bundle lay sleeping in her arms, the baby that had dragged me here in the middle of the night. Melanie isn't dead, Vince. She's living in Norway under the name Dr. Sarah Hendricks. She got a research position at the University of Oslo 2 years ago. Norway? I laughed, but it came out harsh and bitter. So she faked her own death to run away to Norway. That's actually impressive in its complete insanity. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Lucy said. She was going to tell you, eventually. Eventually? I stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked the parking lot. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky the color of old blood. 2 years, Lucy. 2 years I thought my wife was dead. Tommy thought his mother was dead. We had a funeral. People brought casseroles. I know, I was there. I spun around. You were what? At the funeral. In the back. I wanted to see. I needed to know what she was leaving behind. The baby stirred and made a small sound. Lucy rocked her gently, and I noticed how naturally she held the child, like she'd been doing it for more than just a few hours. Whose baby is that, Lucy? She didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. It's Melanie's, isn't it? She had an affair, got pregnant, and decided to disappear rather than face the consequences. It's more complicated than that. It always is. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. Who's the father? Dr. Alex Pruitt. He was her supervisor in HR. He's married. Dr. Alex Pruitt. I knew that name. Melanie had mentioned him a few times, always professionally, always carefully neutral. Now I understood why. So let me get this straight. My wife was screwing her married boss, got pregnant, faked her death with his help, and ran off to Norway to play house while I spent 2 years thinking I was a widower. Vince, I'm sorry, I never wanted... And you helped her. The pieces were clicking together in my head like bullets sliding into a chamber. You helped her fake the death. That's why you're here now, isn't it? Something went wrong with their perfect plan. Lucy's silence confirmed my suspicions. What happened, Lucy? Did Dr. Wonderful decide he didn't want to play daddy after all? Alex decided the baby was too much of a risk. He told Melanie to give it up for adoption, or he'd expose everything. She panicked and called me. So you're what, the cleanup crew? I'm trying to help my sister. Your sister who abandoned her family and let us think she was dead. I was shouting now, and the baby started crying. Lucy tried to soothe her, but the infant's wails echoed off the sterile walls. A nurse poked her head in. Is everything okay in here? Fine, I said through gritted teeth. Just a family reunion. After the nurse left, I lowered my voice. What do you want from me, Lucy? I need somewhere to stay, just for a few weeks until I can figure out what to do. I don't have much money and the baby needs... No. Vince, please. I know this is insane, but I have nowhere else to go. Melanie said you were a good man. Melanie said a lot of things. Most of them were lies. But even as I said it, I was thinking about Tommy, about how he'd react to learning his mother was alive, but had chosen to stay away, about the empty coffin we'd buried and the insurance money that had helped pay for his college fund. The insurance money. Jesus Christ, I whispered. The life insurance. She collected on her own death, didn't she? Lucy's expression told me everything I needed to know. How much? 200,000. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not just anger, something deeper. Something that felt like the beginning of a very long, very careful plan. Okay, Lucy, here's what's going to happen. You and the baby are going to come stay with me. We're going to tell everyone you're Melanie's sister who's fallen on hard times. And while you're there, you're going to tell me everything. Every detail about how my supposedly dead wife pulled off the con of the century. Why would you help me? I looked at her, then at the baby who had stopped crying and was now staring at me with unfocused eyes. She had Melanie's nose and chin. In a few years, she'd probably look exactly like the woman who destroyed my life. Because, Lucy, I'm going to need your help to destroy the people who did this to me. And something tells me you're just angry enough at your sister to want to watch it happen. 3 days later, Lucy and baby Emma were settled in Melanie's old sewing room. I'd told Tommy that Lucy was his aunt who'd been living overseas and needed help after a difficult divorce. He accepted it with the casual indifference of a 17-year-old who had bigger concerns, like whether Jessica Morrison would go to prom with him. Lucy proved to be a goldmine of information. Every evening after Tommy went to bed, we'd sit in the kitchen while Emma slept, and Lucy would fill in the blanks of Melanie's elaborate deception. It started about 3 years ago, Lucy said, bouncing Emma gently as she fed her a bottle. Mel called me out of nowhere. We hadn't talked in 5 years, not since our parents' funeral. She said she was in love and needed to disappear. Just like that? Pack up and fake your death because you're in love? You don't understand what Alex meant to her. He was everything she thought she wanted. Successful, sophisticated, connected. He made her feel important. I sipped my coffee, which had gone cold an hour ago. Important enough to abandon her family. She said you'd grown apart, that you were more like roommates than husband and wife. That stung because it wasn't entirely wrong. The last few years of our marriage had been routine. Work, dinner, television, sleep, repeat. But I'd thought that was normal. I'd thought that was what marriage became after the initial fire burned down to steady coals. So how'd they do it? The death, I mean. Lucy shifted Emma to her shoulder and began patting her back. Alex had connections at the hospital and the coroner's office. He falsified the death certificate and the autopsy report. The car accident was real. Mel actually drove off the bridge, but she was picked up downstream by Alex. They'd planned it for months. What about the insurance investigation? Alex handled that too. He had friends in the police department who made sure the investigation stayed superficial. A tragic accident, case closed. I thought about all the people who'd had to be involved, directly or indirectly. The coroner who signed off on a fake autopsy, the cops who didn't look too hard for a body, the insurance investigator who accepted the story without digging deeper. How many people knew? Just Alex and me. Everyone else thought they were doing favors for a friend or cutting corners to close a case quickly. And you were okay with this? Helping your sister fake her death? Lucy was quiet for a long moment. Emma had fallen asleep against her shoulder, tiny fists curled against Lucy's shirt. I was jealous, she admitted finally. Mel always got everything she wanted. The perfect husband, the nice house, the stable life. I'd been drifting for years. Bad relationships, dead-end jobs, never quite getting my act together. When she asked for help, it felt like maybe I was finally important to someone. But something changed. When I got to Norway last month, everything was different. Mel was different. She was cold, distant. She treated me like hired help instead of family. And Alex? Lucy shuddered. Alex made it clear that I was a liability. He wanted me gone as soon as the baby was born. So you decided to come back here. I didn't know where else to go. I thought maybe if I brought Emma to you, if you knew the truth, you might... I don't know what I thought. I studied Lucy's face in the dim kitchen light. She looked like Melanie, but there was something softer about her features, less calculating. Melanie had always been beautiful in a sharp, deliberate way. Lucy was beautiful like a watercolor painting, gentle and a little blurred around the edges. What's your plan now, Lucy? I don't have one. I was hoping you might have some ideas. I smiled, and Lucy took a step back. Maybe she recognized something in that smile that reminded her of her sister. Oh, I have ideas, but first I need to make some calls. The next morning, I contacted my old friend Dwayne Briggs. Diesel, as everyone called him, had been a Cleveland cop for 22 years before retiring to start his own private investigation business. We'd known each other since high school, and he was one of the few people who'd stuck by me after Melanie's death. Vince, my man! Diesel's voice boomed through the phone. How's life treating you? Like a rented mule, Diesel. Listen, I need a favor, a big one. Name it. I need you to investigate Dr. Alex Pruitt at Cleveland General Hospital. I want to know everything. His finances, his marriage, his professional history, what he had for breakfast this morning. This wouldn't have anything to do with Melanie, would it? Diesel had always been sharp. It's what made him a good cop and an even better private investigator. It might. Can you do it or not? Of course I can do it. Question is, what are you planning to do with the information? Nothing illegal. That's not what I asked. I looked out the kitchen window at the gray Cleveland morning. Somewhere across the Atlantic, my wife was probably having coffee with her lover, congratulating themselves on their successful escape from the boring life they'd left behind. I'm going to make them pay, Diesel. All of them. Well then, Diesel chuckled. This should be interesting. Give me a week. Diesel worked fast. Within 5 days, he had a complete dossier on Dr. Alex Pruitt that read like a case study in narcissistic ambition. We met at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar near the steel mills where the beer was cheap and the conversations were private. Diesel slid a manila folder across the scarred wooden table. Your boy, Alex, is a piece of work, he said, taking a long pull from his beer. 46 years old, married to Patricia Pruitt for 18 years. She comes from money. Her daddy owns half the commercial real estate in Shaker Heights. So he married up, way up. Patricia's trust fund basically subsidizes Alex's lifestyle. The house, the BMW, the country club membership. It's all her money. I flipped through the folder, scanning bank statements and credit reports. What about his job at the hospital? That's where it gets interesting. Alex isn't just any doctor. He's the chief of staff. Makes about $300,000 a year, which sounds like a lot until you see his expenses. Guy spends money like it's going out of style. Gambling? Worse. He's got a thing for expensive toys and younger women. Your wife wasn't his first affair, Vince, not by a long shot. That shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. In my mind, I'd built up Alex as some great love that had swept Melanie off her feet. The idea that she was just another in a series of conquests made the whole thing feel even more sordid. Does his wife know? Patricia? She's got to suspect something. Alex has been sloppy about covering his tracks. Hotel charges on the credit cards, unexplained absences, the usual stuff. But she's never filed for divorce, never made any moves to protect her assets. Maybe she doesn't want to know. Or maybe she's waiting for the right moment to drop the hammer. Rich wives don't stay rich by being stupid. I studied a photograph of Alex and Patricia at some charity gala. She was an attractive woman in her mid-40s with the kind of polished look that came from expensive salons and personal trainers. Alex stood beside her with his hand on her waist, smiling at the camera like he owned the world. What about the hospital? Any dirt there? Plenty. Alex has been using his position to cover up mistakes, falsify records, and generally misuse his authority. The fake death certificate for your wife was just the tip of the iceberg. Diesel pulled out another set of documents. Look at this. 3 other suspicious deaths in the past 5 years, all with Alex's signature on the paperwork, all ruled accidental or natural causes without proper investigation. You think he's been helping other people disappear? I think Alex Pruitt is running his own little side business, and your wife just happened to be one of his clients. The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. Melanie hadn't been special to Alex. She'd been a customer, a transaction. He'd helped her fake her death, collected his fee, and moved on to the next desperate person willing to pay for a new identity. There's more, Diesel said. I traced some of Alex's financial records. He's been moving money through offshore accounts for years, small amounts, carefully structured to avoid detection, but it adds up to serious cash. How much? Conservative estimate? About $2 million over the past decade. I sat back in my chair, processing the information. Alex wasn't just an adulterous doctor. He was a criminal running a sophisticated identity theft operation. And somehow, my wife had gotten tangled up in it. Diesel, I need you to dig deeper. I want to know about every person Alex has helped disappear. Every fake death certificate, every suspicious accident, every family left behind wondering what happened to their loved ones. That's going to take time, Vince, and it's going to cost money. I've got time. And as for money, I thought about the $200,000 in life insurance that Melanie had stolen from Tommy and me. Let's just say I'm highly motivated to see this through. Diesel nodded and finished his beer. What about the wife, Patricia? You going to bring her into this? Not yet, but eventually she's going to want to know what her husband's been up to with her money. And your wife, Melanie, what's the end game there? I looked at the photograph of Alex and Patricia again, studying their faces. They looked happy, successful, untouchable. The kind of people who believed their money and status would protect them from consequences. I'm going to destroy them, Diesel. All of them. I'm going to take everything they stole and make sure they lose everything they have. That's a dangerous game, Vince. They started it when they decided to bury me alive. 2 weeks later, I was ready to make my first move. Lucy had settled into a routine with Emma, and Tommy had grown attached to his aunt and new cousin. It was almost domestic, except for the underlying current of rage that kept me awake at night planning my revenge. The plan was simple. Expose Alex's operation to the authorities and let the system destroy him. But I wanted to do it in a way that would cause maximum damage to both his professional reputation and his marriage. I started with Patricia Pruitt. Using information from Diesel's investigation, I crafted an anonymous letter detailing Alex's affairs and his suspicious financial activities. I included copies of hotel receipts, bank statements, and photographs of Alex with various women over the years. I made sure to include several pictures of him with Melanie. The letter was delivered to Patricia's office at the Pruitt Foundation, a charitable organization she ran with family money. I wanted her to receive it somewhere private, where she could process the information without Alex knowing immediately. Then I waited. It took 3 days for the explosion to happen. Diesel called me at work with an update. Patricia filed for divorce this morning, he said. Emergency hearing to freeze all joint assets. She's not messing around. What about Alex? According to my source at the hospital, he showed up to work this morning to find his office locked and security waiting to escort him out. Patricia must have made some calls to the hospital board. I felt a surge of satisfaction. The first domino had fallen. That's not all, Diesel continued. Patricia's lawyers are good. They've already filed complaints with the state medical board and the district attorney's office. Alex is looking at criminal charges for fraud and malpractice. And Melanie? Still in Norway, as far as I know. But if Alex goes down, he'll probably try to cut a deal. Your wife's fake death is going to come to light eventually. That was fine with me. In fact, it was exactly what I wanted. I wasn't just after Alex. I wanted Melanie to face consequences, too. That evening, Lucy noticed my improved mood. You seem happy tonight, she said as she fed Emma in the kitchen. Just had a good day at work. Vince, what are you planning? I looked at her carefully. Lucy had been helpful so far, but I wasn't sure how she'd react when she learned the full scope of what I intended to do to her sister. I'm planning to make sure the people who hurt my family face justice. And what about Emma? What about me? If Melanie gets arrested, if this whole thing comes out, what happens to us? It was a fair question. Lucy was technically an accessory to fraud, and Emma was an innocent child caught in the middle of adult stupidity. You'll be fine, Lucy. You cooperated with the investigation. You brought Emma back to the States and told me the truth. Any prosecutor would see you as a victim, not a criminal. But Emma won't have a mother. Emma will have you, and she'll have me and Tommy. She'll have a family that actually wants her. Lucy was quiet for a long moment, rocking Emma gently. What if Melanie comes back? What if she tries to take Emma? She won't. How can you be so sure? I smiled that cold smile again, because by the time I'm finished with her, Melanie won't be in any position to take care of anyone. The next morning brought news that Alex had been arrested at his home. The charges included fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying official documents. The local news picked up the story, painting it as a scandal involving Cleveland's medical elite. I watched the coverage with Tommy over breakfast. The reporter stood outside Cleveland General Hospital, explaining how a respected doctor had allegedly been running a criminal enterprise from his position of authority. Isn't that the hospital where Mom worked? Tommy asked. Yeah, it is. Think she would have known this guy? I looked at my son, tall and gangly at 17, with Melanie's eyes and my stubborn chin. He deserved to know the truth, but not yet. Not until I'd finished what I'd started. Probably, I said. It's not that big a place. The story dominated local news for the next few days. More details emerged about Alex's operation, including the revelation that he had helped at least 6 people fake their deaths over the past decade. The families of those victims were interviewed, their pain and confusion broadcast for the world to see. I recognized that pain. I'd lived with it for 2 years. But the best part came when Patricia Pruitt held a press conference outside the courthouse. Dressed in an elegant black suit, she stood before a bank of microphones and delivered a statement that was both dignified and devastating. I am shocked and horrified to learn about my husband's alleged criminal activities, she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. I had no knowledge of his illegal actions, and I fully support the ongoing investigation. I will be cooperating completely with law enforcement to ensure that justice is served and that the families affected by these crimes receive the closure they deserve. It was a masterclass in public relations. Patricia positioned herself as another victim while making it clear that Alex would receive no support from her or her family's considerable resources. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. With Alex in custody and facing serious charges, it was only a matter of time before Melanie's fake death became public knowledge. I wanted to be ready when that happened. So I spent the next week preparing Tommy for the truth. Son, we need to talk, I said one evening after dinner. Lucy had taken Emma upstairs for a bath, leaving Tommy and me alone in the living room. This sounds serious. It is. It's about your mother. Tommy's expression grew guarded. We'd never talked much about Melanie's death. It was too painful for both of us. But now, I needed him to understand what had really happened. What about her? She's not dead, Tommy. She faked the accident and ran away to Norway with another man. For a long moment, Tommy just stared at me. Then he laughed, a short, bitter sound that reminded me of myself. That's insane, Dad. Why would you even say something like that? Because it's true. Lucy isn't just your aunt. She's your mother's twin sister. She helped Melanie fake the death, and now she's here because Melanie abandoned her too. I explained everything. The affair with Alex, the insurance fraud, the fake death certificate, the new life in Norway. Tommy listened without interrupting, his expression growing harder with each detail. So Mom is alive, but she chose to stay away, he said finally. That's right. And the baby? Emma? She's your half-sister, Melanie's daughter with Alex. Tommy was quiet for a long time, processing the information. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. Good. Good. I'm glad she's not dead. Because now I can hate her properly. The next day, the story broke. A reporter had connected the dots between Alex's arrest and the suspicious death of Melanie Mallory 2 years earlier. The headline read, "Dead woman walking, local wife faked death and insurance scam." My phone started ringing immediately. Reporters wanted interviews, neighbors wanted explanations, and my boss at the steel mill wanted to know if I was going to be arrested. I ignored most of the calls, but I did speak to Detective Sarah Martinez from the Cleveland Police Department. She was leading the investigation into Alex's operation and needed my cooperation to build the case. "Mr. Mallory, I want you to know that we don't consider you a suspect in this case," she said during our interview at the police station. "Based on the evidence we've gathered, it's clear that you were a victim of fraud." What about my wife? Is she going to be arrested? We're working with international authorities to locate her. Norway has an extradition treaty with the United States, so she'll likely be brought back to face charges. And the insurance money? You'll need to work with the insurance company on that. They may pursue civil action to recover the fraudulent payout, but that's separate from the criminal case. I nodded, pretending to be concerned about the money. In reality, I didn't care about the $200,000. What I wanted was something much more valuable: justice. Over the next few weeks, more details emerged about Melanie's new life in Norway. Reporters tracked her down at the University of Oslo, where she'd been working under the false identity Alex had created for her. Photographs showed her leaving her apartment with a suitcase, presumably heading to the airport for her involuntary return to Cleveland. I watched the coverage with a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. Soon, Melanie would be back in the city she'd tried to escape, facing the consequences of her choices. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one more move to make. Melanie's flight landed at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport on a gray Tuesday morning in March. I wasn't there to meet her. That honor belonged to Detective Martinez and 2 federal marshals who escorted her directly to the county jail. The local news covered her arrival extensively, with reporters speculating about her motives and the impact on her grieving family. They interviewed neighbors who remembered her as a friendly, devoted mother and wife. The contrast between their memories and the reality of her crimes made for compelling television. I watched from my living room with Lucy and Tommy. Emma was napping in her carrier, oblivious to the drama surrounding her birth mother's return. "She looks different," Lucy said quietly as the camera showed Melanie being led through the airport in handcuffs. She was right. The woman on screen was thinner than I remembered, with shorter hair and an expensive-looking coat. She kept her head down, avoiding the cameras, but I caught glimpses of her face. She looked older, harder somehow. "She looks guilty," Tommy said. The arraignment was scheduled for the following week. Melanie's lawyer, a public defender since Patricia had made sure Alex's assets were frozen, argued for bail, but the judge denied the request. "Flight risk," he said. Given that she'd already faked her death once to avoid consequences, it was a reasonable concern. I decided it was time for a visit. The county jail wasn't a pleasant place under the best circumstances. The fluorescent lighting was harsh, the air smelled of disinfectant and desperation, and everything was painted in shades of institutional green. I signed in at the front desk and waited in a room full of plastic chairs and broken dreams. When they brought Melanie out, I barely recognized her. The orange jumpsuit washed out her complexion, and her hair hung limp around her face. She looked small and fragile, nothing like the confident woman who had walked out of my life 2 years earlier. She sat down across from me, separated by a sheet of reinforced glass. We picked up the phone simultaneously. "Hello, Vince. Melanie. You look good. Older, but good. You look like a criminal." She flinched at that, and I felt a small surge of satisfaction. The woman who had destroyed my life with her selfishness was finally facing reality. "I suppose you hate me," she said. "I did. For a long time, I hated you so much it felt like poison in my veins. But you know what? Hate takes too much energy. Now, I just want you to pay for what you did. Vince, I can explain." "No," I cut her off. "You don't get to explain. You don't get to make excuses or ask for forgiveness. You made your choices, and now you live with the consequences." "What about Emma? She's your daughter too, genetically, half-sister to Tommy. Emma has a family. Lucy loves her, Tommy adores her, and I'm going to make sure she grows up knowing she's wanted and valued. Things you never bothered to teach her." Melanie's composure cracked slightly. "You can't keep me from my daughter." "I'm not keeping you from anything. You gave up the right to be her mother when you abandoned her. Just like you gave up the right to be Tommy's mother when you faked your death. How is Tommy?" "He's fine. Better than fine, actually. Turns out kids are pretty resilient when they're not being lied to constantly." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 2 years and 1,000 betrayals hanging between us. "Why, Melanie? Why not just ask for a divorce? Why put us through the heck of thinking you were dead?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was a coward. Because divorce would have meant admitting I was wrong, and I wasn't ready to do that. Alex made me feel like I was someone special, someone important. With him, I wasn't just a mill worker's wife from Cleveland. I was sophisticated, worldly, worth loving. And now? Now I know that Alex never loved me. He used me, just like he used all those other women. I was just another transaction to him. At least you figured that out. Too bad it took destroying your family to learn the lesson. The guards signaled that visiting time was almost over. I stood up, ready to leave this place and never come back. Vince, wait. What's going to happen to me? I looked at her through the glass. This woman I'd loved for 17 years, who had given me the best thing in my life and then tried to take it all away. You're going to prison, Melanie. For fraud, for insurance theft, for conspiracy. You're going to lose years of your life sitting in a cell, thinking about the choices that brought you here. And when you get out, if you get out, you're going to discover that the world moved on without you. Tommy will be grown, Emma won't know you, and I'll have built a life that doesn't include you. That's cruel. No, that's justice. Cruel was letting your son think his mother was dead. Cruel was stealing money that was meant to secure his future. Cruel was abandoning a baby because she became inconvenient. I hung up the phone and walked away, leaving Melanie sitting alone in her orange jumpsuit and regret. #. Epilogue. New beginnings. 6 months later, Melanie was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Alex got 12 years and was ordered to pay restitution to all the families he'd defrauded. Patricia Pruitt divorced him and donated his remaining assets to a victims' rights organization. Lucy officially adopted Emma and got a job at a local daycare center. Tommy graduated high school with honors and earned a scholarship to Ohio State University. He chose to study criminal justice, inspired, he said, by wanting to help other families find the truth. The insurance company decided not to pursue recovery of the $200,000, considering the circumstances and the cooperation we'd provided to law enforcement. The money went into Emma's college fund, where it would actually serve the purpose it was originally intended for. As for me, I went back to my job at the steel mill and my quiet life in Cleveland. But something had changed during those months of investigation and revenge. I'd remembered what it felt like to fight for something, to refuse to be a victim of other people's choices. On a warm Saturday evening in September, I sat on my front porch watching Tommy push Emma on the swing set I'd installed in the backyard. Lucy was inside making dinner, humming softly to herself as she worked. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was honest. No lies, no secrets, no betrayals. Just a family that had been forged in the aftermath of destruction and had chosen to build something better from the pieces. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Mallory? This is Detective Rodriguez with the Chicago Police Department. I'm calling about the Alex Pruitt case. We've identified another victim of his operation here in Illinois, and we'd like to speak with you about your experience. Of course, I said. I'll help however I can. As I talked with Detective Rodriguez, I realized that my story wasn't really over. There were other families out there who deserved the truth, other victims who needed justice. Maybe I'd found a new purpose in the wreckage of my old life. After I hung up, Lucy came out onto the porch with 2 cups of coffee. Everything okay? She asked, settling into the chair beside me. Better than okay, I said. I think I'm finally ready to stop looking backward and start moving forward. She smiled, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Emma's laughter drifted across the yard as Tommy spun her around in circles. She was walking now, taking those uncertain toddler steps that always ended in either triumph or tumbles. But she always got back up, always tried again. Maybe that was the lesson in all of this. Life knocks you down. People betray you, and sometimes the world seems determined to break your spirit. But you get back up. You dust yourself off. You learn from the pain, and you keep moving forward. Melanie had tried to bury me alive when she faked her death, but I'd clawed my way out of that grave, and I'd made sure she faced the consequences of putting me there. Now it was time to live.